speakers ready to rock. Pass it over to you guys. You are going to absolutely love this presentation. It's called Charge with an exclamation point. Things are always better when you put an exclamation point at the start. Why you shouldn't trust that power bank. So over to you guys.
Thank you, Scott. Let me share my slides. Okay, welcome to our talk, Charge with an exclamation point, as Scott said. Why you shouldn't trust that power bank, by me, Mauro Cáceres, and Luis Ángel Ramírez Mendoza from DC 5411. Before we start, we would like to make a really brief introduction on ourselves and what is this talk about. My name is Mauro Cáceres. I'm the founder of BCA and DC 5411. And I love public speaking. I spoke at DEF CON, at the Texas Cyber Summit, ROSEC Brazil, Dragon Jar Colombia, and a lot of other events. And our DC is mostly focused on social engineering and hardware hacking, and we really love mixing both of them, even though it might seem a little bit strange or a little bit not too compatible between them. And this talk is going to be given by me and my partner Luis, who is going to introduce himself now.
Thank you, Mauro. Hi, my name is Luis Ángel Ramírez Mendoza. I am from Colombia. I'm an electronic engineer working at the Birmingham Cyber Arm, a member of DC 5411. I be a speaker and Dragon Jar and desktop scripting and hardware hacking dealers.
Okay, and the objective of this talk is to explain BadUSB attacks, and I know that you might have heard a lot about this, a lot about BadUSB, and most of the times you probably heard this using a classic approach, the USB stick, the BadUSB memory stick, which is the classical way of doing it. It's the most common way, but we love tampering with different kind of hardware. So in this case, in this particular case, we are trying to do a BadUSB attack using a power bank, a power charger, a portable charger, with obviously a USB interface. So we will show all the process from the list of materials to how to assemble it and how does it works. We have drafted a plan on how we want to do this. This is the power bank we are using as a base for starting this project. As you may see, this seems like a pretty straightforward, pretty common power bank. That it's a pretty common off-the-shelf hardware. You can get it almost at any shop for really at a really cheap value. This looks pretty normal, right? Well, we will explain you why you shouldn't trust this power bank in particular. Let's start with the drafting of the plan that I told you before. We wanted to do three things particularly. We wanted to adulterate an existing power bank, a functioning power bank, to include a hardware hack that is capable of acting like a remotely managed BadUSB. It should maintain the original appearance of the product at all times, so it should be a perfect counterfeit. It should be able to fool even trained eyes. So this final artifact must be able to run a Metasploit payload or a custom payload. We aimed at first at a Metasploit generic payload that should give the attacker a full access. And we have an additional parameter, just because we like suffering, that the product must alert the attacker on success. So whenever the charger was able to spot a victim, was able to find a victim, should reach out to us and say, hey, I found it. This is where the hardware hacking magic comes into play. And my partner Luis is going to explain you all the blueprints, the materials needed, why we have chosen them, and how they interact with each other. So please, Luis, go ahead.
Thank you. The list of material, Arduino Micro Leonardo, SIM Harren AEC module, Volta regulator, standard cable, and SIM card, VA power bank, Arduino IDE, patient, loss of patient.
Believe me, the patience is the most important part of all this list.
All TPs fit perfectly in the original device. All components are cheap and easy to acquire. They add virtually no way to read. They let it appears untouched. The device written is original push, but how the TPs interact with each other.
Just a comment here. As you might have seen, there's a lot of spare space in this power bank. That's because we have used a big power bank and we stripped its parts, we turned them away and fitted inside a smaller power bank. So it should work, definitely should work for charging, but you are buying a big one and inside it has parts of another smaller one. That's why we have so much spare space. Now Luis is going to explain you how does this works.
So when connecting the cell phone to the power bank, it tests messages the attacker, telling him that the device is awaiting for input. The SIM module acts as sender and receiver, having a single phone number while listening the attacker. Once activated, the Arduino works and the human interface device, triggering the add mechanism. This download a malicious APK, activated it, and launch a metapresentation.
So basically what you're doing when you're connecting the cell phone, your victim cell phone, to the BadUSB charger is activating all a series of mechanisms that my friend Luis had engineered here. And you're basically connecting an internal cell phone and a keyboard to your own cell phone. So this internal cell phone, this module, the SIM800L GSM, sends the alert SMS that I spoke about before, saying, hey, I got a victim. And the attacker says, okay. The attacker can either call, just dropping a call, a normal phone call to that SIM card, or he can drop a message, an SMS message. So the module will receive them and will parse it for the Arduino Leonardo. This Arduino Leonardo works like a keyboard and then interprets the payload, processes it and says, okay, if you say so, I will do so. And executes whatever payload you have loaded inside.
In the picture, we can see a test messages indicating that the device is ready and waiting for input. In the graphic, you can see the configuration code for the power bank. In this one, you can see the code for the downloading and the malware.
Right, in this case, we have just hard-coded an internal URL for testing, as you may see, 10.10.10.66 applicación, which is application in Spanish, .apk. But you can obviously, in a real-world scenario, you can obviously use a public IP address of your command and control server or whatever site you have online. As you may see, I know that the light and the reflection might not be the best in this one, but what we wanted to show is the union among the red plastic and the black plastic. As you may see, the device shows no signs of tampering, and even Trinidadies can be fooled here. There are virtually no static differences with the original version, and since it is an adulteration and not a counterfeit, properly said, it contains proper packaging and serial numbers. And even the register your device online functions will still legibly work, for sure. And let me explain here the difference between adulteration and counterfeit. what we are doing is an adulteration. We are taking an existing hardware, we are taking someone else's hard work, modifying it, we apply some hardware hacking voodoo inside, and then we ship it. We package it and we ship it. But the counterfeit itself, it's the act of knocking off, of ripping off another person's hard work from scratch, or on a lesser level, with the trying to imitate it from scratch. In this case, we're already taking a fully done product and changing it for our malicious needs. Aside from its core functionality, which is obviously charging or powering other device, the other secondary functions, like the LED display, will still work. And it will show the corresponding remaining percentage of battery charge, as we can see here, 69%. It looks good, it works flawlessly, because there's not so much to do. You want only to charge devices and it charges. So let's be honest here. Only with these pictures, only having these pictures, or only having this item perfectly packaged in with the manuals and its plastics and everything else, will you be able to detect that this one is a falsification or a counterfeit or a adulteration? Your package is ready. Let's see the final result. As you may see, there's plenty of space. Almost 75% of the space inside this device is hardware hacking. Only 25% of the space used here is for the original purpose of this device, for charging. And you might ask, okay, what can this power band do? Can we play with them? Yes. What you can do with this is to have a remotely activated BadUSB that uses SMS or phone calls for command and control. You can run any bundled payload. Obviously, Metasploit and Meterpreter are Arrow-based, so they are compatible. You can use custom payloads too, as long as they are compatible with Android, since it's our main target. We managed to affect Androids, but not only the common ones, also the modified custom images like Me from Xiaomi and some other popular open source ROMs. And we are currently developing a total different product for iOS with the same objective in mind, but obviously based on many iOS features, not only security features, but common features. It's a little bit harder right now. I think that one of the most interesting parts of this is when you weaponize domestic hardware, you should have in mind the nature of that hardware, what's the main purpose, what you're going to do with that hardware. And a portable charger is something that by nature is going to be shared, or is going to be carried on to many places. So it's a really good attack vector, since you can compromise a lot of phones in a really short time span. And two fun facts that we came across is that our only limit is the available empty space that any device has inside. So if you keep it minimalist, you will have a lot of chances of succeeding on almost any domestic hardware. So you can almost weaponize any hardware you have at home with the proper tools and proper space management. Now, we'll show you a demo, but before, I would like to make some clarifications. This is a lab demo, and we call it a sleepy demo. All inputs, absolutely all inputs and activities have a really higher delays due to heavy use of sleeps and delays between commands. This is done on purpose, so attendees have a better view and understanding of the process. In real life scenarios, we are facing a problem with this, since it takes only a few seconds to launch everything. And it's almost impossible to pause and to keep explaining it. So this is why we done it this way. So don't try this at home. And actually, cell phones were harmed during this demonstration. It wasn't on purpose. Okay, allow me a second to share this video. This is our initial setup. We have two phones, so you might ask why. The phone on the left is the one used for the attacker. The attacker will have to interact with the command and control, you remember the phone calls and the SMS, via this phone on the left. The phone in the middle, in the center, is the victim. It is currently connected to the charger, to the infected charger. And the laptop will be our listener for Meterpreter or Metasploit. As you might see, we are still waiting for a connection. We turn on the charger, it's still disconnected. Now we are going to connect it. The screen lights up, as you might see, because it is charging. So it works on the expected way. You connect a charger, you expect it to start charging. It will take some time to boot, but whenever that happens, we'll receive a message right there. Right there, we have a message from this number. We'll unlock the screen just to see the process. It's still loading. The loading process, the loading small screen, is not interrupted. Now we have to call it, and you have to meet two conditions in order to start the payload. The caller should be in a whitelist so that no one else calls that number, a telemarketer or anyone else. And you should be sent to the voice message inbox. When you are sent to the voice message inbox, you're automatically launching the payload. Right now, as you may see, it have unlocked the phone. It will try to download a malicious APK now. As you have seen before in the source code, we are using an internal IP address for an internal command and control fake server. We have downloaded DC5411 APK, which is, in this case, a generic malicious Meterpreter payload. It's not something customized or something specifically crafted for this talk. It will take advantage of the already opened Chrome session. We'll try to reach the downloads folder and execute this application. It should try to parse the permissions menu where the application asks which permissions you should be granting it and if you are okay with that, and will automatically accept those permissions and launch the application. This, in a real case scenario, takes only a few seconds. But in this case, we are obviously putting a lot of delays and sleeps in between. It will search in the downloaded folder, as I said before. It will start interacting with the phone. The permissions, as you may see, it tries to grab all the permissions in the system. And once this is done, we will obviously hit our Metasploit handler or Metasploit session. The point in this is that we are launching the most generic attack of all, the most well-known attack of all, and you can obviously really customize this or tailor it to your own needs. So you can really take this as a base, as a departing point on building a more dangerous solution, on something that fits in your pocket. This is the end of the demo. Now, give me a second. We'll just relaunch the presentation. Okay. Now, I know what you are going to say. So I have built an appendix for sharing with you some short comments on fake hardware and hardware counterfeiting. And we like to play a game every time we present one of our prototypes that is Spot the Imposter, and I want to share it with you today. You may say, nice talk, but this seems to be an isolated case or a very particular situation. I'm a person who has by philosophy to do not trust power banks, so I won't fall for it. Okay, that's acceptable too. But it isn't an isolated case. We are faking hardware just for fun, but there's people that is faking hardware systematically for profit. Altered or counterfeit hardware is becoming a trending entry point for organized criminal rings, which, aside from falsification itself, engage in other kinds of chained attacks. For example, recently, this last year, counterfeit Cisco switches were discovered deployed in production. I'm going to tell you the story of this Cisco incident in a few slides. But before, let's play a short game. That is what I spoke to you before, the Spot the Imposter. This is one of our prototypes called Evil Genius. It's a tampered BadUSB keyboard, which acts as a remote keylogger. So it sends everything you type in that keyboard via any open Wi-Fi it might find nearby. This is going to be open source. So take a look at this keyboard. Again, you may see that there's no evidence of tampering, no evidence of external modifications or any nasty going on. This is the original keyboard from a non-stock picture from an e-commerce site. Again, there's virtually no difference. This is another of our prototypes that's called Sounds Legit. It's a BadUSB speaker. So whenever you connect it, it will function as a speaker. You will be able to hear your music, to listen to anything, to podcast, to wherever, but it will steal all your data behind the scenes. Once you open it, you find that it comes with certain surprises bundled in, as you may see on this picture. This one is the original product from a non-stock picture from an e-commerce site. As you may see, there are virtually no difference. And now you may say, okay, that's interesting, but it's domestic hardware. I don't think you will fool an organization with that. And yes, actually, you may be right. But again, we are doing it for fun, and there are groups doing it for profit. So I'm going to show you some examples of counterfeit hardware for professional use or that are used in critical environments. I will show you this particular and pretty interesting case taken from an investigation led by F-Secure. I will show you 3 switches boards, and the original one is the one in the left. The other 2 are knockoff. Take a look at this. I will highlight certain differences that I have found, but that nevertheless I would have been fooled by, because I'm not a trained eye in this. Take a look at the cable quality, marked in blue. The first one features a mesh-like cable cover, and the others are just like thermotape, thermoduct tape, something like that. If you can take a look at the purple squares, you might see that these pieces are, on the original one, covered, naked, naked. On the second one, covered, naked, covered. And on the third one, covered, covered, covered. If you can take a look at the green marked one, you can see difference in the size. You can see difference on its layout, its general layout, but you can even see that the original one lacks a screw, as you can see in the screw hole marked in like with a bronze color here. And a really particular detail I found is that the third one, that is a counterfeit one, has Cisco, as marked there in the red circle, has Cisco laser printed in the board. So they printed the trademark, and the logo in the board itself. Now, be honest, would you be able to distinguish between them, to tell them apart? It's really takes a trained eye to do this. Now, when this was discovered, a lot of people started sharing their cases, their particular experiences with counterfeit hardware on Reddit and on other forums. And some people ended up tailoring a checklist of how to spot a counterfeit Cisco switch. It turns out to be pretty interesting and pretty funny at the same time, because you might want to see this first. This one is an original one. Sorry for the bad quality, I couldn't get the original picture in a better one. This is the original picture shared in that thread. This is a fake one. Again, the original one, the fake one. In that list, that checklist, you see people telling counterfeits apart from original by their screws. For example, saying, hey, if you receive a Cisco switch with rounded up screws, they are fake. They should be more square-like. This is an example. And in this particular model, they say, you know how to tell them apart? You have to take a look at the brightness in the port numbers in the front panel. You know, 1, 2, 11, 13, 12, 14, 23, 24, etc. Look at the fake one. This is pretty bright. Take a look at the original one. They are more gray-like. So there are those little details that people are digging into, those little failures by the counterfeiter. Those little failures are the only thing that might tell them apart, which makes this trend actually pretty dangerous for both little organizations, small organizations, big ones. So really take about this. Okay, it's time to close this talk, share our conclusions, and obviously receive your questions. Questions are pretty simple, like with any BadUSB case. Always be wary of any new device, whether it's USB or not. And as you have seen before, anyone could be a victim. Even a senior network engineer who buys a Cisco switch from an authorized reseller or from a really trusted source, and then when trying to connect this Cisco switch, this appliance to his infrastructures, he finds out it's a fake one. Anyone could be a victim. We are not everyone is an experienced hardware engineer. And with a few dollars, with a really cheap price, anyone could build or even buy a product of this type. We haven't really invested a big number in this charger. Again, we are doing this for fun. So if someone really wants to tackle this thing in a professional way and with a good budget, it can turn out to be really interesting. Whenever possible, use preventive measures against BadUSB. And don't trust PowerPoint. Don't trust that speakers either. And forget about trusting that keyboard. You really shouldn't trust anything. You can follow us on Twitter and GitHub. We are open sourcing on a really slow pace, actually, but we are trying to open source all of these little investigations. We are, for the moment, sharing on the slides. Once we are achieving versions that do not blow up our house, we're probably going to open source them. Follow us on GitHub or Twitter, and our DC and GitHub too. So feel free to drop in. We always love to share and talk about any topics, mostly hardware hacking, open source intelligence, social engineering, but we are open to discussing any crazy idea you might have or you might want to suggest. If you have any question, feel free to reach us now here or via Twitter or GitHub. So thanks for that, and I hope you have liked our talk.